Today we're going to take one of these foam boards of paint on it, trying to transform it from this into a this size Disney character. The one tiny caveat is I am by no means an artist in any way, shape, or form, so I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't even know if this is going to turn out well, and I truly don't know how to start this, so I'm just going to go ahead and paint the whole thing white as a base, and hopefully that turns out well. So here I am just laying down a base layer of white. This is just to give myself something to actually draw on so that the rest of the paint will actually stick to it. And if you're asking yourself, why would I want to do this in the first place? It's because my wife saw a video on TikTok not that long ago of the same process but on plywood, and she is determined to have that for my son's very first birthday coming up in a few months. So we finished our first coat, and I did notice that there was a little bit of warpage. However, it did almost immediately go away once it actually dried. So don't worry about that. It's been about 4 hours since we painted this, and it's not quite exactly how I want it, so I'm going to go ahead and apply another coat. When checking after the first coat, something that I was really looking for was to see exactly how many matte areas there were, and to make sure that there was all one consistent white across the board. For mine, I noticed that there was a lot of spotty areas, so I wanted to make sure I added another coat so that it was nice and uniform across it. It's the next day and I let this thing dry overnight, and I finally got the color that I was looking for on it. So we're gonna go ahead and move on to our stencil. If you remember at the beginning of this video, I told you I am no way an artist, so I do have a quick hack for this. I bought this projector on Amazon a couple of days ago. It was only about 60 bucks at the time, and I do have a lot of planned usage for it, so I don't see it as a waste. But it's gonna help me with the stencil. I'm gonna go ahead and hook it up to our laptop, and then it's gonna project the character that I want onto the foam board. If you're looking for something like this at the time, like I said, it was about $60, so I'll leave a link for it in the description below. That being said, let's go ahead and get this stencil on the board. For our test today, we are choosing the classic Mickey Mouse. My original plan was to use my projector and project it onto the desk, but as you can see, it doesn't really work that well. This is what we were seeing, and it's definitely not big enough for what we need. My next idea was to use the projector and put it onto the wall, which actually worked out pretty well, and we now have a clean image to work with. At this point, it was pretty easy. All I was doing was tracing where the character was from the projector. At one point, I did realize that I didn't have my hat on. I did not want anyone to see my hair, so that's why all of a sudden I have that hat. But here we are just continuing to sketch out Mickey Mouse, making sure that we're just hitting all of the black line items needed. Look at this thing. This thing came out way better than I thought it was going to. With that being said, now that the stencil is done, we're gonna go ahead and start painting this. Since I have no formal training in painting or anything artistry related, I thought the best way to start was to just lay down a base layer of black. So here I am outlining all of the black items. And honestly, this part of the project was when I really started having fun with it all. I kind of got into the groove of painting, and all of a sudden everything started to come together, and I thought this was really cool. For the first time in a really long time, I felt like I was making something, and it was awesome. So after adding the black and red layers, this is what we're at, and I think it's honestly looking really good. Now we're gonna go ahead and start adding the additional colors like the tongue, and then we're also gonna start adding the yellow for the shoes. And just as a reminder, if you're doing this at home, you definitely want to make sure that you can still see a little bit the outline even after you're done painting. You need to make sure that you can go back and outline those later on. And this is what it looks like before the outline. Let me tell you, this was the most satisfying moment of this entire project. I literally felt like I could see the character coming to life when I was doing this outlining. Little word to the wise, make sure that you have steady hands going into this. Not nearly as clean of lines as I really wanted this to be. All right, I let this thing dry overnight, and I have to say I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, especially since this is my first attempt at this. There's a couple of spots I would love to touch up, but since this is the first attempt, I don't really think I'm gonna do that. So let's go ahead and start getting it cut out. I initially started with scissors and quickly realized that was not the way to go. Thankfully, I had an X-Acto knife left over from another project that was brand new, and I started using that, and this thing came off like butter. Definitely make sure that you use a very sharp X-Acto knife, change out those blades, whatever you need to do in order to get a nice solid cut. You'll see here that I'm actually starting to twist the board. I realized pretty quickly that was the best way to do it. The best way that I can describe my technique here is what I would do with a pumpkin during Halloween when I'm starting to carve it. You'll see me starting to cut off chunks at a time, revealing a portion of the stencil. And honestly, I thought this was the best way to do this. All right, so this is the final product. Unfortunately, I did cut the tail off. I have it right here. Just imagine that that's stuck in there. But honestly, for a first time and a very first attempt, I think that that's turned out fabulous. But you guys let me know what you think. Let me know any tips and tricks that you guys have as well if you've done something like this before. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and hit subscribe. Have a great day, everyone.